Hey everyone, it's time for another edition of Beaver Banter.
Beaver Sports Talk lives here.
It is the Beaver Banter podcast presented by Bemidji State Alumni and Foundation. I'm CJ Baumgartner, joined as always by Ian Rivers. And Ian, we have a guest on the program today. Why don't you introduce him?
Yeah, joining us today is assistant men's basketball coach Jake Masek. Jake, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
All right, pleasure having you on. Men's basketball season got underway last week. You guys got going, and we're going to dive into all that. But before we get any further, we just want to talk a little bit about yourself, Coach. Why don't you just give us the kind of quick backstory on your basketball career, on things that led you to go into coaching, and what led you to come to Bemidji State?
Yeah, awesome. Well, obviously super thankful for the opportunity. It was a dream of mine to play college basketball my whole life growing up. I was down in the Shoreview, Minnesota, Twin Cities area growing up. I got into AAU coaching while I was playing. I ended up going to UMary, who's in the NSIC, is where I started out my playing career. And I was able to, go there, and then the coach got let go. So I went NAIA route for a little bit, Northwestern. And then I went to the Northwestern, the Division III school. And then I ended up at Crown College as well for my master's year. And at both of those schools, we won national titles. So super good, super big blessing to be there with Coach Tim Gross is still at Northwestern, my coach, and then Luke Herbert at Crown College. So I was able to win national titles there and just see what it takes on a program level. Everybody that it takes to, make it all the way, and all the moving parts. And, during that time I was doing coaching AAU route, moving up the ladder, 15U, 16U, 17U during that time, during the summers. And I ended up graduating with my master's because I played 5 years, obviously because of COVID gave us an extra year. And I went right into coaching. And because of that, Coach Boshi gave me a chance here last year as the second assistant coach. I have a big background. I went to California for a while, player development, got to sit in some workouts that Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving did and just be a rebounder, right? I just wanted to learn, there's no better way to learn than those guys. They're doing it the right way. So I have a big background in player development, and I bring a lot of that stuff to our guys. And, I actually just got done with a workout with our guys before I came here. So I really loved it. I noticed it was a passion of mine. And then I was an all defensive player in college. So, part of my role here is I'm the defensive coordinator, is how we split it now. And Coach Boshi's obviously a well-known offensive mind. So I learned from him on that side of things. Still got to be a sponge. But my job is to run the defense, obviously, among other things. And, I have a great time doing that. Although it's frustrating in the NSIC to have to do that, I try my best.
Yeah, of course. It's a very good, very talented basketball conference from top to bottom. I'm sure you know that in just a couple short years here. Good on Boshi for bringing in a national champion. You got to have people on the coaching staff that know what it takes to win some games come tournament time. But that's really cool. All the player development. And you answered actually one of the questions I was going to ask is what kind of role do you have on the coaching staff, being more of the defensive coordinator? I don't have much experience in basketball past high school, but among our coaches, that was one of the things that I was curious to see what your role was really for the coaching staff there.
Yeah, awesome. Obviously I can go a little bit more in depth with that. Obviously my background as a player, I love that stuff. As frustrating as it is, I love it, having to break it down with our guys. But, the biggest parts of it is obviously getting on, positioning, like little, choosing what coverages we're going to use within a game. Are we going to switch? We have different calls for everything. One thing that I would anticipate from our team this year on the defensive side of the ball, just to give a little insight to people listening here, is we're going to be really fun to watch because we're going to throw a lot of different looks at people. And we have the flexibility, and we brought a team in that can do that has talent, that has guys who can defend in space. And that's something that's super exciting. Obviously, the offensive side of the ball, we've had no problem so far on the offensive side of the ball. Now we're just 2 games in, so that's a low sample size. But on defense, I would anticipate us being somebody who you can't consistently get a feel for. We're going to throw a lot of things at you, and that means if you call timeout, you have no idea what's going to come next. So That's going to be an advantage for us, and something that I'm going to dive into. But we're a work in progress, like everybody is at this point. It's we had a 20-something practices, but that doesn't mean we're where we want to be. So want to keep pushing the guys to be in the right positioning and guard your yard. And the biggest thing is I want to take pride in defense on that side of the ball. They're going to score. It's just how much how efficient they are.
Exactly. Yeah. And, obviously the NSIC, you know full well, being just a very competitive, very fun basketball conference. And, as a guy who tries to scheme up and a guy who tries to scheme up a good defense there in this conference, what are the things that make a defender in the NSIC good or a good defender, whether it's on the Beavers, whether it's on any team? What does a player have to have defensively to be good in this league?
Yeah, I mean that's a phenomenal question. It is a demanding league in terms of guarding offensive players. I think the ability to switch, have quick hands. As somebody I think of last year, and I hate to give too much credit. He's not in the NSIC anymore. He plays for Denver's Logan Kinsey from Moorhead. And it's somebody who I had a lot of respect for because he can switch onto any one through five, and he took personal pride. He has length, but he had the ability to guard guards as well. And I think that's what makes somebody really, really elite in our conference. I would say somebody that we have now is Henry Shannon, a transfer at the 4. He can guard a lot of positions, and he protects the rim well. He's somebody who will play above the rim, so he'll be exciting to watch on offense. But I think that's what makes you a great defender is your ability to sit down. And then another person that we have right now, or 2 other people I would shout out right now that I think have been doing a great job are Eddie Hedquist, our late transfer from Sweden. He was on Pacific last year. Hasn't been asked to do a ton on defense, but he's been absolutely phenomenal. 4 blocks in our last game, guarding the ball. And then Isaac Sieverts, coming back from his injury last year, which, he's really, really worked hard. I know people don't see behind the scenes, but to have the performance he did in that first game meant a lot to him. I remember sitting after St. Cloud last year next to him on the bench and going, hey, man, it sucks that this happened in the last game to you, but you can only choose how you respond. And those 3 guys, I think, are examples of what makes a great defender. It's that willingness to guard, having quick hands. And then the only other thing I would add is understanding the scouting report, because we just got to take away what they want to do. If we take that away, we got to live making them do what they don't want to do. And sometimes it doesn't always work out, but that's what we got to do.
Is it difficult to game plan at all? Like, we're pretty familiar with like the travel schedule. The teams kind of buddy up with another team and travel out to, maybe you're playing Minot and UMary the same weekend. Can it be difficult to game plan it all for 2 different style of offenses in the same weekend that you've got to go up against? One night you're playing a high flying offense, and maybe the next night you're playing some team that wants to slow it down offensively and kind of drag out every possession.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what also makes the league so difficult, like you both have mentioned so far. We have a bunch of different styles, a bunch of different coaches who approach it a different way. They want to play slower. They want to play faster. And I think it's just leaning into that. You want to make them do what they don't want to do. So that's what we try to lean into. Our versatility with different looks this year will help a lot with that, because I think we can dictate, something that I've been talking about with the guys is we don't really want to be in the defensive mindset, if that makes any sense. We are attacking on both ends. We don't want to let them get into their reversal passes if we can. If we can make them uncomfortable, that's what we want to do. So we're always going to be in attack mode, whatever we do, whatever our objective is. But yeah, you're right. Some people like to play slower. Some people like to play faster. And that's part of my job, to have them prepared. But it is difficult after getting done with a Friday game with how hard the NSIC is. To turn them around, refocus the mindset, and get them into that. And, that's something we've been doing this year. We've adopted a little more model this year with giving them a little bit more rest days, kind of towards the Division I model a little bit more. And I think Coach Boshi's done a great job of that. We're just always chasing after what's the best we can do on a year-to-year basis. So that's how we're helping our guys out right now. But being mentally sharp and staying tuned to the scouting report is definitely the thing that helps the most with turning it over, being ready for a Saturday.
Yeah, and getting ready now for the season. I know you guys had a couple games so far underneath your belt, and the main bulk of the season, not too far away. But let's just kind of take a 30,000-foot view here as you come into this 2025-2026 season. I know, you guys had a little bit of injuries last year, couldn't quite get into the flow of the year. But this year, what is the what do you think the ceiling is for this team? How good can you guys be when things are all rolling? What should Beaver fans expect out of the men's basketball team this year?
Yeah, I mean, number one, I can guarantee we're going to be extremely connected. Sometimes in some areas last year, we probably failed at that. And that is something that we focused on as a staff moving forward into this year, is making sure that leadership is intact. Tate Olson and Henry Shannon are our captains this year, and John Pekarich and Austin Josephson are our assistant captains. And we kind of did that based on the players' feedback. But it is staying connected in terms of that, the leadership. I would expect us to be extremely exciting to watch. We have a lot of versatility. Tate Olson can handle the basketball like a guard. And Henry Shannon can also handle the basketball like a guard. And it's not often you have a 4 and a 5 who can do that. And then, it goes without mentioning, our wings are very versatile. And then, JP can shoot the heck out of it. Dom Fairbanks, who's somebody a lot of people might not be familiar with, can shoot the cover off the basketball. So, we got guys who can space the floor. We got guys who can play in space. And I would say this, the NSIC, especially in the North, is a lot of people picking up pieces outside of, our first opponent coming up next Tuesday, who have a lot of returners. Everybody else, for the most part, has a lot of new pieces. So obviously they have a little bit of advantage in terms of they have a lot of turnover in the same spots, but a lot of us are dealing with the same thing. We have new groups, new pieces. We got to figure out how to do that. And you know what? I think also on a staff level, we've been extremely connected in terms of just choosing each game, taking it one at a time, and getting our guys as best we can prepared. And the offensive and defensive responsibility split that we have doesn't mean we don't have input on both sides. And obviously, me and being in a new role here, I value his opinion a ton. He has way more experience than I do, but I take a lot of personal pride. And one thing I would mention is that we need to improve is limiting those second chance points. Because our first shot defense in that second game was great. And I was not too pleased with our rebounding. And I think all our players are aware of that at this moment because we've already had practice. So, I'm pretty straightforward. I'm going to give it to them exactly how I see it. And if they don't like me, they're going to have to deal with it. But it's just kind of, that's our approach from him and I being players, coming from a player background, is we just want to be the coaches we would have wanted as a player. And I think they've responded really well to that. And I think it's about challenging them to always chase after that growth, regardless of the result.
You brought up the second chance points. It's so funny. Every week we come on here and we talk about all these basketball cliches. There's so many. It's like, well, we got to, if we can win the turnover battle and not turn the ball over as much, or, maybe we limit their fast break points or their second chance points. And it just always feels like there's so many, like you ask a coach, what do you want to do to try to win the game? It feels like they could throw a number of like 10 answers at you and everybody's like, all right, that's just coach speak. But what's the big thing? Obviously connectivity, you said, which is huge, especially defensively. I've always felt like, because communication is so key when you're on the court as a player, whether it's switching off on a ball handle or something like that. But even when you're not talking, it's so important to understand what the player, behind you is doing and whether or not they're going to be there when the player you expect to cut is cutting. But besides connectivity, what's something, especially defensively, that you're looking from these players this season?
Yeah. To me, it's, we're putting a big emphasis on, guarding your yard, we call it. And that means, we want to put teams in one-on-one situations at the end of the clock. So honestly, I'm looking for positioning on the ball. A big thing that I focus on our guys is how many times can you make an offensive player change in terms of changes. If I have to break that down, just change direction side to side. If he has to change 5 times before he reaches the paint, that's a win for us. If he has to change 3 times before he reaches the paint, that's a win for us. And, as we get 10 seconds and under, you don't have much time to make 5 changes. You got to figure it out. And so for us, I think it's about guarding your yard and taking the personal pride. And I know that might be a little bit of coach speak, and everybody does that a little bit. But for me, that's, I take a lot of personal pride in just our guys being able to do that. And that's something that we've been harping on, whether that's, hey, when a guy, turns, we got to push step. We can't be dropping our feet and opening our hips. If that's something that I can mention that's specific, and that's something that we've seen. We can't turn guys loose on straight line drives. They got to go banana drives, if that makes any sense, like rounding first base in baseball. I want them to drive like that. They got to drive in curved lines. And that's what we want. And we want to force that. And we want to put teams into late clock situations where they got to be one-on-one. And, like I say, if they make a tough shot, we impound the ball and we go play offense. And it is what it is.
And, as you guys get ready for the season, obviously UMD not too far away on the conference calendar. For you guys, how do you see kind of the conference shaking out, and how do you think you guys fit into the NSIC this year?
Yeah, awesome. Like I said, it's north and south, so it kind of lays it out a little more direct in terms of who you need to beat to be where you want to be, which I think is really cool. I didn't really love the 15 teams last year, or, when it goes to that, I just, this is a little bit more simple in terms of how it's laid out, which is awesome, I think. And, like I mentioned before, it's a lot of new teams coming together. I honestly think we have a chance to beat anybody on any given day. Now, we also have the chance to lose to anybody on any given day, which gives a great opportunity. There's a lot of great coaches that have come into the league. So I think for us, it will be adjusting to, as you guys mentioned before, slow play style, what their pace is. I anticipate we could see some new zones from some people. So we need to be ready for that, to adapt on the fly. But, that's the biggest thing to me, is being ready to go on a day-to-day basis, game to game. We can't get too far ahead of ourselves. We got Oak Hills on Friday. So we're not looking ahead to UMD too much. We got to take care of that. And it's a big game to also for the community around Bemidji too, to get them in here. So it's important to us to respect that and have a good game, but also get done what we need to get done. We need to see a response from our guys in terms of finishing possessions. And that's what I'm looking for. We can take personal pride in defense, but if you give a team 15 more shots than you, is which we did last game, it's going to be hard to win. So, they only made one more shot than us, and we gave them 15 more. So, it wasn't our greatest shooting game across the board in the second half, but that's something that I look at too. So I think it's wide open this year. What I want to see is a lot of physicality from our team as on a game-to-game basis. So, cutters, post positioning, I want to see them fight. And then also no easy fouls. So, what we're looking for on a game-to-game basis is that focus on those things, just breaking it down. And we kind of do that in the locker room. We have 4 to 5 things on each side of the ball. Keep it simple. We do those 4 to 5, we're going to win the game.
I know you're sorry.
Go ahead.
I know you're the defensive coordinator, but can we get a little bit of an insight into maybe what you can do as a defensive, mind to help, the offense succeed? Because oftentimes basketball, it's so connected. It's not like football where you have 11 offensive players and 11 defensive players, and you can only do so much to help out. What does the defense for your team do to help out offensively?
Yeah, I think, it's about rebounding out and getting the ball quick, like I already mentioned on that side. I think we're going to give different looks. People who watch our games have probably seen 2 to 3 presses have already been thrown on to start this year. And at risk of giving it away, we haven't shown the whole card yet. So at risk, if other coaches are listening to this, they haven't seen it yet, but we have more things in our back pocket. So I would expect to see that. That helps your offense out a little bit, whether that's shortening the game up. The other team starts their offense 19 seconds and under, or, getting a steal and jumpstarting the offense. Something we talk about is kills, which is 3 stops in a row. And like you said, defense can help the offense out. So we know it's a momentum game. So if we can get kills, we believe in our offensive philosophy a ton. So, I think it's really big for us to take the pride on the defense in terms of getting 3 stops in a row, turning it over to offense and building that momentum. So I would expect to see the different looks, but also heating them up from time to time, getting a steal, which will help jumpstart the offense, get out in transition. And that just helps, guys like Isaac Sievert, who are athletic, Eddie, who can shoot, JP, who can shoot. And then, Henry Shannon has already thrown down some dunks. He can definitely play above the rim. So that gets us, have a little fun. The guys say have a little fun in transition. So, I would expect those things. And the kills is the biggest thing I would emphasize that we get into on a day-to-day basis, is like defense to help the offense. Let's get 3 in a row. And let's just focus on that. And you might even see our guys. I think Henry got an end one over the weekend, and he turned around and was clapping at everybody and had him huddle up. Those are just little things that we do for him to be like, hey, let's get 2 stops, more stops, and get a kill here. And that's what we're really focused on.
All right, we're talking here with Bemidji State Beaver men's basketball assistant coach Jake Masek joining us here on the Beaver Banter podcast. Coach, appreciate the time. Ian, if there's any other questions, I guess fire them away. But we appreciate the time. We know you guys are busy with the season underway and getting going. And best of luck. I know you got Oak Hills coming up, and then a little Thanksgiving tournament and things like that. And then we're into the bulk of the NSIC schedule. So we appreciate you taking the time to come on, give us an insight, and welcome anytime through the season, off season. Welcome to come on Talk Hoops.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me. And thanks for all you guys do for Beaver sports. And hey, let's get those soccer wins this weekend.
Let's go.
Absolutely.
Once again, want to shout out Coach Masek and giving us his time. Always really great to chat with the players and coaches when we get those opportunities, because again, it can just bring us some insight that we don't really have, and can just help you when you try and watch Beaver basketball games to be like, oh, that's what they're trying to do, or this is what they're trying to do, and things like that. So we appreciate Coach Masek giving us the time here on the Beaver Banter podcast, which is presented by Bemidji State Alumni and Foundation. Once a Beaver, always a Beaver. The Bemidji State Alumni and Foundation is here to keep that green and white pride going strong for its 50,000 graduates around the world. From scholarships that open doors for students to events that bring BSU alumni and friends together, you can get connected, give back, and leave a legacy at Bemidji State. Whether you're a proud BSU grad, a local supporter, or hey, you just love cheering on the Beavers, come be a part of the action at bsualumni.org. That's bsualumni.org. Bemidji State Alumni and Foundation, proud supporters of the Beaver Banter podcast. Okay, Ian, as we wrap up our talking here of men's basketball on this episode, they did have some games, and I know Coach Masek alluded to it a little bit, but let's break down the first weekend of action. Bemidji State got a win in their opening game against the Reddies, and you could say Bemidji State very prepared, in fact, very ready for this matchup. Huh?
Yeah, I just had to let everybody sit with that one for a second. Sorry.
You can hear everybody clicking the skip button on the 30 second. Like, get it, move it, please.
Move it along here.
But hey, an 89-69 victory against Henderson State at the Central Region Challenge in Pittsburgh, Kansas. And they start off the season 1-0. Kind of what went in to that game, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, BSU just kind of dominated offensively. I mean, 89 points, that's a really good offensive output. And
shooting 65% from the field.
Yeah, I mean, and 33% from 3-point is maybe a little bit under what you want to be at, but that's probably about like the baseline of it's a decent enough shooting day where you're going 1 for 3 from beyond the line. 70% from free throw. A couple huge offensive outbursts from Henry Shannon III and Tate Olson in this game, both with 27 and 25 points respectively. BSU had 5 players in double-digit point scoring, with 3 other players getting 10 points in this game. It was just from start to finish. I was kind of monitoring it on my phone as the game was going along, and every time I would refresh the score, it was, hey, BSU's up 14, BSU's now up 15, and it just kept slowly climbing over the course of the game. So it's good to see them kind of wire to wire be able to handle a non-conference opponent like that.
Yeah, exactly. And again, something we talked with Coach Masek was kind of getting those, eliminating the second chance points. And of course, that a lot of times comes with winning the rebounding game, right? And Bemidji State was able to be plus 13 in the rebounding department. So overall, when you look at that, they controlled the glass and they were able to eliminate those second chance opportunities and was able to get a win. Of course, Bemidji State rode a 48-point first half to be able to kind of put them with an 18-point lead at intermission, and then they were just able to run away with it there and get the win. So Bemidji State able to come out in that one. By the way, should be noted, Henry Shannon III played 40 minutes of the 40-minute contest. Tate Olson played 37 of those minutes. So pretty impressive there in that opening game showing. Unfortunately, not quite able to get the same result. A close loss to Southern Arkansas University. And again, in our conversation with Coach Masek, just one where they felt like, hey, they wanted to win the rebounding battle. They weren't able to do that. Bemidji State was -10, 44-34 in the rebounding department. And when you lose a game by a couple points, those second chance points, those rebounds, those key things do end up being very important in the grand scheme.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it just was a case of Bemidji State didn't shoot well enough in this game. You know, you lose a game by, 2 points, and 39% shooting is not as good as 48% shooting, and even 50%, for Southern, or I'm sorry, 50%. Oh, I'm looking at this totally backwards.
Yeah, you got to,
Bemidji we're the road team, man.
Bemidji State shot 48% from the field. Southern Arkansas shot about 40%.
Yeah, they flipped it from the first game, so I just assumed
just to mess with you,
not
Ian.
At home. But yeah, so Bemidji State actually shot really well from beyond the 3-point arc. That's something we saw them do last year pretty well, was shoot 3-pointers in they shot 28 of them, so that's quite a few, and thankfully for them they made them. But yeah, like you said, CJ, just not quite enough, and unfortunately dropped a close game to the I can't exactly remember what their mascot is, but the Southern Arkansas, maybe Cowboys. Let's go with that.
Yeah, there's a cowboy. There's a cowboy on the back of a horse, and there's a big horseshoe in between. So you'd have to think Cowboys.
Educated guess.
By the way, Tate Olson played all 40 minutes in that contest. Eddie Jala Hedquist played 34, of course, the transfer from Sweden and out from Pacific University. Pekarich played 39 minutes, and Henry Shannon III played 29 in the game. I just find it fascinating when a guy goes all 40 in the game. That whether it's the game plan, whether it's just how that player is feeling, it's just really fascinating when it's like, hey, you just got to go the whole game today. We just need you to go and do this. And for Bemidji State, they now turn their attention to Oak Hills Christian College. It's a yearly game that this team does. It's always a good tune-up game for the men's basketball team. And I know Coach Masek alluded to it. It's just a good community event. Obviously, Oak Hills Christian College, little Bible college just south of Bemidji, and just a good local game to get people in. And obviously people from Oak Hills are going to be there. It's a very quick drive for them, and just a good early season game for everybody to get together, play a basketball game, and usually a good tune-up game for Bemidji State before things really get rocking and rolling. I know Coach Masek said all the right things, but I think we know that this is a Bemidji State team that's expecting to win this match and then get ready for their first conference game of the year, which will be Tuesday night at UMD, and kind of some interesting stuff with that, Ian, because as we were looking at this, there's a couple things that stand out in the NSIC schedule this year that we should have confirmed with, that I should have asked Coach Masek. We should have confirmed before we had him in the chair. But Bemidji State and UMD kind of look to be travel partners this year, Ian.
Yeah, there's back up to 16 teams in the conference, and that means that some of the pairings are going to be switched around. Obviously, it was a team from Upper Iowa that left the conference and a team from North Dakota that joined. So it's always going to throw a little bit of a wrench in the plans for the conference's travel partners.
Because Bemidji State's longtime travel partner was Crookston.
Yeah.
University of Minnesota Crookston. And again, the reason you would do a travel partner is just because you're going to play 2 games in a weekend. So if everybody kind of pairs up, and that group will play each of the 2 from another group, and it's just kind of a way to make travel easier, make things kind of more accommodating, and try and work the load. But yeah, Bemidji State's long time was Minnesota Crookston, now flipping from the west end of Highway 2 to the east end of the state on Highway 2 to UMD.
Yeah, exactly. And something else we noticed when looking at the schedule is a lot of Thursday, Saturday matchups this week, or not this week, this season for the Beavers. And I'm sure for a lot of the NSIC, it's at least 6 weekends that we counted that are Thursday, Saturday, and probably less weekends than that are actually Friday, Saturday. So it probably is intentional. If
there is 4 weekends of Friday, Saturday. Otherwise, so it's about a third of the season for that, and 2/3 of the season is Thursday, Saturday. And typically it has been a Friday night, Saturday, And again, it's probably to accommodate for school and things like that, because it'd be a Friday night game, Saturday afternoon, get back home kind of thing if you're on the road. And now it feels like it's a Thursday to Saturday, which actually, from a game plan, from a basketball, from a team perspective, I don't hate that, because if you're a parent trying to follow, it makes it weird because of that Friday in the middle. But also, if you're the players, if you're the team yourselves, I'm sure coaches advocated for this one. It's like, now we get a day in between these two games. You'd have to play, like you said in our interview with Coach Masek, and I keep pointing back to it, but one team plays a high-flying offensive style, the next team slows you down, or vice versa, or you just need like a practice, just a walkthrough to be able to prepare for your next opponent. And before, it was like, you get done with a game, it's 10:30 at night, you got to bus an hour and a half to 2 hours, sometimes even 3, to get to your hotel, and then you got to get up and play a day game the next day. It just sometimes, I think, is a lot to ask on the players, and I think good overall that the conference is at least dipping their toes in this year.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, it's something that I think is a benefit. Like the only downside I can think of it is like you said, kind of the travel aspect, where it's like, well, now you got to take maybe an extra day out of your class, or the parents that try to follow their
or even travel budgets. That's another night of a hotel.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm sure they're not, going to Minot, coming back to Bemidji, and then 2 days later driving out to Jamestown or I'm sorry, Bismarck, I think.
Maybe they are with some, but highly unlikely.
Highly unlikely for most of those trips. So, yeah, interesting wrinkle to say the least. But I'm excited. We're kicking things off. Two games down, and we'll have 2 more to talk about next week when we bring more men's basketball to the table.
Exactly. Let's talk a little women's basketball. Ian, they got their season underway. They got a couple wins. We'll break all that down. First, though, let's give another shout out to the good folks who sponsor this podcast.
Do you want to be a part of the team behind the teams at Bemidji State? Join hundreds of dedicated fans when you donate to Beaver Athletics and help BSU pursue its next championship. Your gift can power your favorite program, establish a scholarship for a student athlete you get to meet, and so much more. Every dollar brings the Beavers closer to raising another trophy. You can add to the proud tradition of success at Bemidji State, so don't wait. Give today at bsualumni.org/Beavers. That's bsualumni.org/BEAVERS.
Alrighty, and let's talk a little Bemidji State women's basketball. They start the year 2-0, getting wins over Valley City State, 81-68. That game was played in Valley City, and then the home opener, an 85-53 victory over Minnesota Morris. And we'll kind of take these games one by one here, but I think the overall tone, Ian, when you look and 2 exhibition matchups as well. And again, none of these teams are Division II, but it is good to see, 93 points, 92 points, and then 81 points, 85 points. It's good to see early on that it feels like the offense has been able just to at least see the ball go through the hoop a lot. And again, even though it's not NSIC competition, it still is just good to have the offense get rolling early.
Right. And sometimes as a basketball player, confidence is one of the most important things you can have. I'm sure as an athlete in any sport, but as somebody who played basketball, when you're shooting and you're making a lot of shots, it just feels a lot better when you're out there and you're trying to score for your offense. You look at that Friday game against Valley City State, leading the way is Cassandra Karen. She had 25 points, the transfer from I believe it was Missouri Western. She transferred in from this year, a senior forward for the team. So, hey, and also Academy of Holy Angels, where she went to high school. Shout out to my dad, who also went there. I believe that's in Richfield, Minnesota. So, yeah, just shout out to her. The rest of the team, pretty balanced scoring. Tons of players on the box score: 6 points, 6 points, 6 points, 6 points, 12 points, 10 points, 4 points, 3 points. So plenty of players, on the scoring category. And that's something that, this team could benefit from as we head into NSIC plays, is having a deep bench would be something that really, really excites me about what this team can accomplish this year.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot to talk about. And again, you talk about the transfer from Missouri Western and Cassandra Karen. Not only did she have a great game, she also leads the team in scoring through the first two games with 34 points, averaging 17 per game. Obviously, not a ton, in the 3-point department, but obviously somebody who can get some rebounds, averaging 6.5 per game. Couple steals, and I think overall just a really nice player that Bemidji State will want to use and put in a position to succeed. Obviously, a forward at 6 foot even. It's again not like a trying to find the right word, but not like not a constant, but something that obviously that Bemidji State women's basketball really likes to do is they like to try and get it down to the paint. They want to control the block. They be able to do some of that stuff, and to be able to get a player like Karen into the program this year to try and contribute in her senior season is really good. And I think just a really good sign of, kind of philosophically what this Bemidji State women's basketball team wants to do. They have a player, at least through the first couple games, that kind of can complement their plans. And we can see not the blueprint, obviously, because they haven't played conference games yet, but you can see how they want to play basketball. And they have a player that so far through the first couple games is able to push that forward.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that this team has needed for a while. It seems like it's been, a one-player show or two-player show for a lot of this, the last couple of seasons that we've seen. And it'd be nice to have a couple more people to rely on, when you're out there and you need a bucket, especially, when you can play a little bit of an inside out game, which it seems like the Beavers did on Monday in their game against Minnesota Morris. I don't know if you have any other comments about the Valley City State game, but yeah, this game was a pretty good one. They won by 32 points in this one, 85-52. And it was really that second quarter, CJ, where things just took off. They had a 3-point lead at the end of one, and then it was 34-8 in the second quarter in favor of the Beavers. And from there, Coach Stoltenberg got a lot of girls into the game. I don't know if I'm going to go down the list and count how many, but it seems like it was every player on the whole roster that got into the game and had at least 3 minutes of action. Tyrion Plash led the way in the scoring category. In 23 minutes, she put in 16 points and had 3 steals. 5 rebounds as well to add to that. Just a good game, for the Beavers. And like you said, it's not a Division II opponent, but it's a really good game for the confidence of this team heading into a week from today as we record their first NSIC conference game again against Minnesota Duluth, which is coming up next for this team. And again, we see these games on the schedule almost every year, and it's a good thing for BSU to kind of take care of business in these 2 games. It really didn't seem like it was ever on the fence, so that gives me a little bit of confidence, heading into the season, and we'll see what they can do.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of a fascinating wrinkle to play your first conference game of the season so early, and then you kind of take a break over the Thanksgiving weekend, and then you're in it, and is what we like to call the meat and potatoes of the schedule in your NSIC portion. You get a little appetizer on Tuesday, 5:30 p.m. at Romano Gym in Duluth for this one against the Bulldogs. And obviously, by the time we record the next podcast, we can, maybe the game has happened. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more. But overall, it'll be fascinating to see what you can do against a conference team in your first taste of action. And then you go to the Tampa Thanksgiving Classic. You play a couple games down in Florida, one on Black Friday, the other one on Saturday, taking on Florida Institute of Technology and the University of Tampa. So it's just, these are tune-up games. And obviously UMD is a conference game and it's important, but also it's your first conference game of the year. So you try not to make that game too much heavier than it has to be. But overall, you have 3 games to kind of get you ready. And then come December, you're into the main bulk of conference games. And it'll be fascinating to see. Again, this is a Bemidji State women's basketball team. Obviously, Taryn Plash coming back, but a lot of new faces, a lot of kind of new spots, a lot of new names we're going to have to learn this year. And I'm really looking forward to learning those names and looking forward to seeing what this team can be in the 2025-26 season. There's just a lot of intrigue. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm not here telling you they're going to win the NSIC or they're going to be top of the conference at the end of the year. But what I am going to it'll just be fascinating to see how they put this puzzle piece together and how they are able to navigate through this season come NSIC play.
Hey, 2-game sample size so far, and I like what I see. So,
Look, if we could just replicate this every time,
yeah,
then they will
until
win
we
the
get more
SIC.
until we get more data to go off of. I'm going to be pretty hyped about this season and what it can mean for both teams so far on in the BSU gymnasium.
Exactly. So, all right. That, I think, wraps up this episode of the Beaver Banter podcast, brought to you by Bemidji State Alumni and Foundation. One again, shout out Coach Masek for giving us some time to talk a little hoops and to get some elite basketball minds on the program, because we have basketball minds otherwise, but not necessarily elite, Ian. I don't quite think. We're not quite there yet. We have not grinded the tape as much as some of these other guys. So go check out, if you haven't already, our other episode where we talked about hockey over the weekend, where we talked about football, kind of wrap up, same with volleyball, women's soccer. Let's go win some playoff games, and we'll have more content for you coming through. Follow the Beaver Banter Discord. Follow us on all the social media sites. And until next time, it's the Beaver Banter podcast. We'll see you later.